Hey everybody, my name is Angus Wright, and I also go by Angus by Design. And I am an advocate for human potential. And the reason why I say that is because I am an Advanced Level Facilitator for the Wellness Recovery Action Plan. This was a program or a structured curriculum that was created by Mary Ellen Copeland and was put into evidence in 2010. And if you want more information about that, you can go to the Advocates for Human Potential website or go to wellnessrecoveryactionplan.com and you can get all kinds of information. So, what I'm hoping to do is to briefly go over all of the sort of parts of what Wellness Recovery Action Plan or WRAP is. And I usually like to start off with the 5 key concepts. The keys are hope, personal responsibility, education, self-advocacy, and support. And these keys were essentially created by a community of peers in northern Vermont in 1997 at a conference that was led by Mary Ellen Copeland. And the participants at this conference were of all sorts of lived experience within the system. And so hope, they really wanted to instill that there's an unlimited amount of hope and recovery possible. And that hope is important because even when we are experiencing an absence of hope, we can actually lean on each other. And when we practice, we can actually cultivate and accumulate enough hope to hold for others and to support them when needed, while also learning to express and to seek support when we need it. And then there's personal responsibility. And this is basically having the freedom and the power to choose our response in all of our situations in life. So, really, personal responsibility is being able to conduct ourselves in a way that is meaningful to us, but also that would give us a better chance at a better outcome, right? We may have situations where we experience distress or rumination. We can never really know what others are going through. And so that's also part of personal responsibility for me, where I get to kind of set boundaries and limits, but also allow myself to only be concerned for myself, right? And then there's education. And really, it's about, I used to kind of look at it like academic, right? Except for people learn every sort of way, and everybody is capable of learning in some sort of way. And sometimes the best way we can learn about ourselves is through experience. And so, education, for me anyway, is really about educating myself about myself and about what's happened in the past and what I might anticipate in the future in terms of communicating my needs. And then we go into self advocacy. Now, this is really kind of knowing what your rights are and asserting them, speaking up and out for yourself and to advocate for your rights. So it's about really looking at the right that we have for personal autonomy and to be able to make the choices of the things that impact our realities and the things that impact our day-to-day lives. And so for me, I really love the personal Bill of Rights and the assertive Bill of Rights. And I love things like the patient Bill of Rights. And, and often if we're members in different places, there are actually constitutions and laws and rules. And even in the country we live in, there are often things in place to be able to reflect and learn about, where we stand and what our options are. And then there's support. And support is, looking at developing and maintaining relationships that support wellness and recovery. So it's clear that support means whatever your experience has shown to be helpful, and that the qualities of a supporter are whatever you've defined them to be. So it's really about your choice in who is supporting you and who is not supporting you, right? Not everybody has access to the same types of supports. And so really it's about going on a journey of self-discovery to sort of determine what it is that you think you might need, and who you can have in your corner when the time comes to put that into place. So now, basically, the biggest factor to WRAP and Wellness Recovery Action Plan is that it's voluntary and it is self-determined. It is a plan and an action plan that we are creating for ourselves and not being created under coercion or by force or even by suggestion, right? Just we can be encouraged to learn about ourselves, but it's truly, all participation is valid, and that includes non-participation. Wellness tools are really kind of defined by those things that are safe, simple resources that help us stay well, and as well as those that help us feel better when we're not feeling well. I know for me, I have a bookcase at home that is full of items like, affirmations and meditation materials, little bookmarks, little sort of tchotchkes from different places that I visited, different mementos, different tokens, things that really actually bring me a lot of joy and a lot of pleasure. And they're just things that remind me of good times, because when I'm not feeling well, I'm really wanting to get as close back to that place of feeling well. And essentially, so those things are going to kind of inform me as to how I build off and go from there. So now we're going to be creating plans with our wellness tools, and it really needs to kind of start with a baseline of what we feel like when we're well. So that's kind of like a validating reference point. And it's kind of exploring like what you're ultimately capable of under the circumstances, right? Because a WRAP is something that we want to return to every time we're well, and to review where we may have gone off or where we could maybe improve something, right? And so then we want to do like a daily maintenance, and we want to explore what our daily tasks look like and what those things are that we need to do to kind of at least try to do every day to feel better. For me, it's brush my teeth. If I can spend time brushing my teeth and making my mouth feel better, it actually helps to ground me. So I have a routine where every day I brush my teeth. And same thing with so when I wake up, I brew coffee, I hug my dog. These are things that I can sort of make a little list and a plan for myself that I'm going to need to do every day. And so we're creating that list, and it's, trying to just make it as simple and easy to follow. And it's doable stuff, not the should list, right? Because we don't want to should on ourselves. So then we want to do like a maybe to-do list and things we might do. And so they don't need to happen every day, but they may need to, help us out every once in a while to kick into gear, and help us to keep as well as possible. And then again, just sort of reflecting on how we looked at, the 5 key concepts, looking at like what we're like when we're well, daily maintenance, things we can do. We start to then go and look at what these plans look like, and then what are the actions we can attach to it. And so we have triggers, right? And these are external events or circumstances that may be upsetting. And what I like to do is I like to reflect on the external ones so that I can then, determine what potential internal triggers I might experience. And in the beginning, I didn't really know the difference between either of them. So that's why, practice makes perfect. And so triggers, and then so we're listing what they potentially could be. So one of my triggers is sudden change to plan, or not planning at all, right? So those can be two triggers of mine. So the trigger action plans are me sort of thinking in advance in my wellness what I might need to do if that comes into place, right? And so, like not planning at all, I kind of go in there not worried about an outcome. So as long as I know I can have food or whatever, and I know my cutting off point, I call it my Kenny Rogers approach, knowing when to hold them, when to fold them, when to walk away, and when to run, right? And then the other one, looking at, well, sudden change is a plan. Well, that's where I actually kick into my physical exercises, like making sure that my breathing is okay, making sure that I'm not ruminating or thinking or starting to feel any sense of rejection. I'm really checking in with my emotions at that point. And so, we want to write down those plans if we're wanting to keep track. And for me, I definitely want to keep track of that because that's what lets me look back at it later on when I'm feeling better. And then we have early warning signs, and those are the sort of subtle signs that we may need to really take a look at our daily maintenance list, um, or do those things that in our wellness toolbox, right? They're just those little self-reflections that they're subtle signs that things just aren't quite right. Um, and then, the benefits of input from others and early recognition, essentially the sooner you can catch it, the better. And then we want to have like an early warning action plan. So as we become aware of these things, we want to be sort of making note of that and then coming up with ideas that we can kick into high gear and take action to do. And so then we have when things are breaking down, and those are like, this is a critical time when we choose to take immediate and deliberate action for our wellness, or we allow um, some troubling feelings or behaviors take control. So, we want to look at, you know, are things getting better? How long has it been? Are the signs that this is going to turn around? Is this a usual cycle for us? Or do we need to do something different, right? Again, self-determined. And then the action plans. So if we notice certain behaviors, certain thoughts, certain feelings coming up, we already know in our own words, in our own language, what we can do to try to turn that around, right? Just to press pause. And then we want to talk about crisis plans. And now this is really where we're taking, what we've created so far with our 5 key concepts, with our different parts of the planning. And then this is really where we are putting it into documentation and then potentially giving it out to others. And these are the things that tell them what, specific things that they can do for us, right? And what we want and what we don't want. And it's really so that we can kind of keep in control even when we're maybe not feeling like we're in control, or we're not able to demonstrate our sense of control, right? And then, so all the thoughts we put into creating our wrap and taking control in the actions kind of like help us define what crisis means to us. And crisis plans need to be very clear about when others step in and what we want them to do. And then also what we can do for ourselves, because it's easy for people to try to take over, right? Explain. So essentially, we're looking at how we adapt. So, what we're like when we're well, to avoid having those who don't know us make invalid assumptions about us. So, if we're in crisis and we find ourselves in hospital or we're at the doctor's office and they're only seeing us in a certain state, it's really hard to get a bigger picture, right? Um, and then, we're really looking at our behaviors and signs that indicate to others that they may need to activate the plan. And so it's sort of pre kind of agreed things, so that there's no real guessing, right? Um, so our supporters, we essentially want to have at least 5. And the reason is because we want them to be able to do specific things for us. And we really need to be able to determine who we want and who we don't want involved in our support. We may need to reflect on things that have to do with medications, whether we want it, whether we don't want it, based on our values or based on our wishes. Considering things like what has worked and what doesn't work. Looking at all the options, like are there supplements, herbal and healthcare things that can be done? Are there holistic approaches, pharmacists, and are there resources? And what's really acceptable to us and what isn't? And then treatments. So we're looking at what our personal preferences are and what works for us. So acceptability and unacceptability, addressing alternatives and complementary therapies with examples. And then the next part that we look at is regarding home care and looking at that as an alternative to hospital, right? And then what our preferences are, and especially when we have a strong support network. And then we want to look at treatment facilities in terms of should it become necessary, and things to be avoided in terms of what we would look for, and then help from others in terms of what we've learned is helpful during difficult times and what isn't helpful. And so this really deserves a lot of extra attention and discussion with our supporters. And we want to sort of talk about post-crisis and what it looks like to inactivate the plan, right? We want it to be clearly understood. We want to have specific indicators that lets others know that they don't have to follow it anymore. So for me, when I'm starting to, make my own choices, when I'm actually more socially outgoing, those are the times when my supporters can kind of check in with me and just be like, hey, so you feel like taking this over? And I can be like, yep, I do, or nope, can you give me another day or two? And then, we're really talking about the potential for advanced directives, right? And these are things where our crisis plans can be kind of rolled out into legally binding documents. So it's good to really explore what our choices and options are and what our rights are, because these are ways that we can protect those. So basically, we want to be able to reach a clear agreement with our supporters so that we can feel safe and they can know. Post-crisis planning is that transitional time when we're getting over crisis and working towards getting well. So there's things we might need to look at and address if we go into crisis and do require treatment. And then, really just looking at what the reasonable timetable for resuming our responsibilities so that we can ease back into our routine. So that's been basically a complete overview of the Wellness Recovery Action Plan. I've been Angus Wright. I also go by Angus By Design, and I would encourage you to stay in touch. Thank you very much. My wellness, my way.